Well, here's an interesting topic, and I'm actually trying to encourage a little discussion here in the comments section. People do comment every once in a while. Why are the giant versions, especially of mammals, extinct today? I mean, the giant tree sloth, the giant red panda, something that looked like a rhinoceros that was bigger than an elephant, these kinds of things. And there are theories about this, and some guy here has written a book about it. But look at what he says at the end. The author says that a lot of people think maybe it's climate change or humans thought these things like the mammoths were delicious, and so they hunted them to extinction. But really, no scenario really matches the available data that we have these days. And this is a review of a book, but it was in Science News magazine just this past November. So what do you think? You know, as a creationist, you ought to be trying to think, how could Noah's flood work into this?
Are you sure about that, Dr. Jackson? Let's take a look at what several major creationist organizations say about the timing of the Ice Age, when Ice Age mammals lived, and a worldwide flood. Ken Ham believes that the flood happened about 4,350 years ago and that the Ice Age followed the flood. He says eventually the Ice Age peaked and then declined within several hundred years of the flood. Creation.com says the Ice Age reached its maximum about 500 years after the flood and that it lasted about 700 years total. The Northwest Creation Network says in the creationist point of view, the Ice Age is generally dated between approximately 2300 BC and 1800 BC, which of course would be after the flood.
Since Noah was commanded to bring, and God brought the animals to him actually, was commanded to make a boat that would take 2 of everything that had the breath of life in their nostrils, 7 of all the clean and all of the birds.
Well, that's not what the Bible says or what even the other creationists say that it says. They say that the Bible says 2 or 7 of every kind, not 2 or 7 of everything. In other words, that would mean 2 of the elephant kind, 2 of the sloth kind, and 2 of the beaver kind.
Then there must have been dinosaurs on the ark, but there also must have been these giant forms of these animals. Of course, the baby ones that had been weaned off their mother would have been the most logical to bring on this trip, so that you didn't have for space.
Wait a minute. Haven't you been suggesting that the flood killed off all these giant Ice Age mammals? Now you're saying that baby ones were on the ark.
But why would these things have gone extinct? Larger body size is actually metabolically, physiologically more stable, which is a secular quandary for the extinction of the dinosaurs, but also for the giant mammals, the other megafauna.
Well, the truth is we really don't have all the answers as to why the real large animals went extinct at the end of the last Ice Age. Larger body size would have been an advantage during colder times, but in times of rapid climate change, like at the end of the last Ice Age, when climate is getting warmer fast, it would have been a disadvantage.
So let's have some discussion on this, and in the comments section below, and hopefully we'll have some fun with it. Think Noah's Ark. Think the climate changes. Think 4,368 years ago.
Here's the original post that features the video on his webpage. He asks the question, why are the formerly giant versions of today's species no longer existent? For instance, there were once 8-foot-tall, 300-pound beavers, and they were not the same species of beavers as we have today. He's right, there were giant beavers, and the last of them died out just about 10,000 years ago, which means they were around when we were. They must have put up a terrible fight. And in addition to the problems that they faced with climate change, I bet their pelts made great winter coats. Now check out this response on his Facebook page. And the dinos, for such huge bodies, their nostrils were only about the size of horse nostrils, and they had teeny-weeny lungs, and only could live in a high-pressure, high-oxygen atmosphere. That sure sounds an awful lot like the theory we're about to hear.
All that ultraviolet and gamma rays from outer rays was blocked by that water canopy. It was a wonderful place, and because of the heaviness of that water canopy, the partial pressure of oxygen was much increased, much more oxygen. Now let me tell you, I'm a doctor. All right. Now here's what I believe happened with the dragons, with the dinosaurs. Well, basically they died out because after the flood, when that great canopy of water came down, there was much less oxygen around. Much less. And this is Time magazine, dated 1987, and they've showed that the oxygen before the flood, which was 4,400 years ago, contained much, much more oxygen. Now, here's an 80-foot long Apatosaurus, often called a Brontosaurus, and its nostrils are tiny, the size of a pencil, really, because there was so much oxygen, you only had to breathe in and out once a minute, and it would perfuse his whole body with oxygen. But after the flood, serious trouble. That poor old dinosaurs, they had trouble breathing. They lumbered around and they looked blue, I should think, because they were cynos. They couldn't breathe. By the way, they were breathing very fast. And what happens if you breathe in and out very fast through nostrils, which are only as thick as this pencil? Guess what? Your nose catches on fire. Have you ever heard of dragons breathing fire? Yeah, well, that's what was happening. That's my theory, anyway.
The link to where I got that clip will be in the video description. So there you have it. The poor dinosaurs were breathing so hard, they turned into fire-breathing dragons. They probably killed everything around them before they killed themselves. The comments on his Facebook page seem to support that theory. I disagree with the premise that larger animals in the past have a baffled creationness. I wholeheartedly agree that there's a reasonable hypothesis that we had higher air pressure and concentrations of oxygen. Nostril sizes of large reptiles and dinosaurs require higher concentrations of oxygen. But at least Dr. Jackson admits that the creationist hypothesis doesn't explain why the beavers disappeared. So in the end, Dr. Jackson himself doesn't have an answer as to why the large mammals went extinct. He wanted to blame it on a flood, but then he talked about putting baby giant animals on an ark. And just like all his other videos, apparently he didn't think too hard about this before he made it.